are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for
keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Thursday, February 1st. We have a lot to talk about on the show today, but before I get into that, I just want to remind you guys to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So, with that being said, let's get right into what we are going to talk about for today. So you probably saw it as I pulled up the tips graphic. So that's the second topic of the show. But we'll start off the show. We're going to just touch upon the Justin Tucker, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce thing that happened before the AFC Championship game. I know I touched upon it briefly, but I know Tucker gave his explanation, and then Kelce and Mahomes gave their side. So I just wanted to touch upon that. In the second part of the show, as you saw, we'll talk about the Super Bowl odds. Who's got the best odds to win Super Bowl MVP? I mean, obviously, it's not really a surprise who's going to be, the first two, who's got the best odds. But, we'll touch upon that. I'll give you my thoughts on it. Then in the third part of the show, we'll talk about some more coaching changes. The Seahawks, they hired defensive coordinator Mike Macdonald to be their next head coach. So, he spent the previous couple seasons with the Ravens. So that's another head coaching spot that has been filled now. There's only one remaining, and that is the Washington Commanders. So we'll wait and see what they do. We'll also talk about the Packers also hiring a new defensive coordinator as well. And then in the final part of the show, we're going to talk about the New York Jets, because there was an article that came out that basically just talked about a lot of things that happened behind the scenes. What went on, a lot of stuff with Robert Saleh. So we'll get into that, and that'll be the final part of the show, because I wanted to touch upon that as well. So with that being said, let's get right into the first topic, which is talking about the little situation that we had that went on before the game on Sunday. So obviously there's a video. You've seen the video probably, but you see Justin Tucker stretching and Patrick Mahomes is warming up. You see Tucker's helmet and his two footballs and the kicking tee, which for some reason I couldn't think of what it was called, but that was all right there while he was warming up. And then you see Travis Kelce walk over, toss the helmet, toss the footballs, and you see Tucker laughing. So they all had their explanations as to, first of all, the main thing is both sides are like, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal at all. But you had Tucker saying that it was gamesmanship. He said that they were kind of taking it a little more seriously than he thought. And then you had Travis Kelce and Mahomes, basically saying, they were taking it a little more seriously. Because for me, when I just watched the video, I was like, I didn't really like that, just how that went about. But, what Kelce said on the podcast was that, so there are a couple things. Well, he talked about, Tucker being, well, I'm not going to say it on the air, but, he basically was saying, why are you keeping all your stuff where the quarterback's warming up? He said, if you're not going to pick that up, I'll happily move that for you. But I'm trying to see where Tucker, so Justin came out and he said it was more of a joking gesture and kind of fun. Well, that's just what Kelce's saying, kind of fun, competitive, and I get it. So Kelce's like, yeah, I get it. He said he was kind of winking at me. trying to get under my skin. We weren't in a joking mood. We were ready to get after it. It's one, and they were saying, and he also said it's one of the unwritten rules. When you got guys warming up, and I get it because I'm pretty sure. So Mahomes had asked Tucker to move the equipment, and he did, but I guess he really didn't move it that much. So then that's why Kelce came over and just tossed everything into the end zone. So this is what Mahomes said. I've had 7 years of doing the same warm-up routine. There's only been 3 occasions where there's been a kicker that wasn't moving out of the way. It was in Baltimore all 3 times. Okay, so, and he did say Mahomes also said that he thought Tucker was trying to get under their skin, adding that he was going to let it slide, but then Travis, that's when Kelce moved all the stuff. That's when Travis moved it for me. Tucker said Monday in the consider the pregame incident to be gamesmanship and all in good fun. But yeah, so really it's not a big deal. But I do kind of agree with what they said on the podcast. I mean, you had the equipment right there. Well, first of all, you could maybe bump into it or something. But at the same time, it's I don't think it's that big of a deal. But they all said it's not that big of a deal either, But and I get it. It's to try to get under their skin, and the Chiefs they've been in that playoff mode this whole time since the playoffs have started. So it's gonna take a little more than that to really rattle them, and it didn't really affect them because they came out and they went right down the field on their first drive. Again, the Ravens defense shut them down in the second half, but the Chiefs, they've been in that playoff mode, and they don't want any they didn't want any distractions, and that really just didn't do anything because the Ravens ended up losing. Because I know when that video came out, everyone's like, "Oh, Justin Tucker's going to kick a game-winning field goal, and it's going to be amazing." Well, that ended up not happening. He only kicked the ball one time. Of course, he made it because he's Justin Tucker, but yeah, that's really what it was. I don't think there was any, it didn't seem like there was any bitterness on either side. They kind of were just yeah, it's not a big deal. They both said that Justin Tucker's the best kicker, in the NFL. Might be the best kicker of all time. Probably is the best kicker of all time. So, again, it's just something that Tucker has done in the past, and they just weren't having it. But but Mahomes said he wasn't going to do anything. It's just then Kelce came over and just tossed the equipment. But then you saw, Mahomes toss the kicking tee, because he did that too. When Tucker put the stuff back, then Mahomes took the kicking tee and he tossed that. So, but yeah, really, like I said, it's going to take a lot more to rattle the Chiefs, because right now it doesn't seem like anything is, because they've just been locked in, ever since the playoffs have started, and now they're back in the Super Bowl again, and the Ravens they went home. So again, like I said, we're going to be talking about the Super Bowl a lot. This week's almost over. We got all of next week too to talk about things. So there's still some little bits and pieces from the championship games that I still wanted to touch upon, and this was one of them. Again, because there's so much time between now and the Super Bowl, and obviously we'll get into the Super Bowl MVP odds in the next segment. But yeah, this was just, I know I touched upon this a little bit, but we heard now the explanations of all three players. So I just figured, all right, I'll talk about it. But yeah, it's not a big deal. It's but you look on social media and you're like, wow, this is a big deal, but it's not. You got to take certain things with a grain of salt. And I think it's also important that you hear both sides of a story. But I think the other thing is people are just sick and tired of the Chiefs, that they're just going to automatically just side with Justin Tucker. But it's whatever. I mean, it happened. The game was played, and now we're looking towards the Super Bowl. But I thought it was interesting that in the ESPN article that I was looking at, because it had all of them, all their quotes in it, that Mahomes said it's happened in Baltimore 3 times. So, but and listen, you thought maybe that was gonna fire up the Ravens, but it really didn't do anything. It just didn't. But again, not a big deal, and you move on from that. So, but like I said, I mean, we got a whole nother week of Super Bowl content. So, and obviously when that happens, there's going to be media day and all that. So, we'll talk about things that, the players are saying throughout the week and things like that as we get set for the Super Bowl. But obviously we got the Pro Bowl stuff this week, which I don't really know what there is to talk about with that. I mean, I guess you could talk about who's going to the Pro Bowl. I guess tomorrow I'll do a segment on that, because I know obviously a lot of the players that get voted in don't necessarily go. So then they have, alternates get voted in and they go. So we'll talk about that tomorrow, towards the end of the show. Peyton Manning and Eli Manning will be coaching against each other, which I like. That I like about the Pro Bowl. I think that's a lot of fun. But also because ESPN is broadcasting it, and they do the Manning cast, so of course they're going to be a part of it. But I like that. I know it probably is going to get played out. I mean, this is the second year now they're doing this, but listen, they're entertainers now, and I listen, for me personally, I'm fine with it. They could do it every year. I wouldn't care, but for other people, they'll probably be like, oh, another year of this. I mean, people will find a way to complain about things. That's really just what I've come to the conclusion with. So, but yeah, so we'll talk about the Pro Bowl tomorrow. Obviously, Kelce and Mahomes, they got a Super Bowl to prepare for. The 49ers, they got guys that got voted in from their team got a Super Bowl to prepare for. But also, a quick little thing. Do you guys prefer this? Question. And you could leave it in the comments, whatever. Do you prefer this, or do you prefer the traditional game? Because, well, I mean, I'll be honest. I don't really care either way. I did like when they did the fantasy draft. They had two former players, be the coach or the captain, and they would draft, and they did that. I liked when they did that a couple of years. That made it a little more interesting. But then that kind of they did away with that and went back to the traditional way. Now they got rid of that, and now we got this. I mean, I at least give them credit for trying to be a little creative, I guess, if you want to call it creative, but it's just it's not working. It just at least for me. But I don't know. That's just my opinion. I mean, I don't really care. I honestly do kind of miss the traditional game, but it's fun seeing. I mean, having Eli and Peyton be the coaches of, like, if they did the fantasy draft, that'd be cool. I don't know, but that's just another thing. Yeah, that's just again another little tangent I went off on. But anyways, so that's basically it when talking about this. So let me know what you guys think about this whole situation, even though I think most people probably are just like, it's not a big deal, which it isn't. I mean, they even said it's not a big deal themselves, but let me know in the comments below. So when we come back from our first break of the show, we'll talk about the Super Bowl. We'll talk about the MVP odds, for certain players. I'll give you my thoughts on that. And that is what we'll do when we come back from our first break of the show. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are now going to take a look at the Super Bowl MVP odds for, I guess the main players in the going into this game. So, obviously, the quarterbacks are going to be, the top two. So, Patrick Mahomes right now, he's got the best odds, which there's no surprise. You look at DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM, Caesars Sportsbook. Now I'm looking at covers.com. So on DraftKings, he's got a plus 125. FanDuel is plus 140. BetMGM is plus 125. And Caesars is plus 135. Listen. And now, actually, before I say what I was going to say, then Brock Purdy, he has the second best odds. He's plus 225 on DraftKings, plus 200 on FanDuel, plus 220 on BetMGM, and then plus 200 on Caesars Sportsbook. Now, here's the thing, and I mean, this is not just talking about Super Bowl MVP. This is talking about the MVP trophy in general. And most people have been saying this. It's a quarterback award. I mean, you really got to do something. You got to really do something to make an impact on the game if you're going to want to win MVP. I mean, you go back to, so obviously last year Mahomes won. The year before that was Stafford. Brady won the year before that. 2019 was Mahomes. But the last time it was not a quarterback was Julian Edelman. Julian Edelman in 2018. You go back to that Super Bowl, Rams-Patriots. That was the most boring Super Bowl I've ever watched. I just couldn't believe. And it's unfortunate because we could have got a better matchup than that. And we got stuck with the word, you had the Patriots against the Chiefs and you had the Rams against the Saints, and any other combination would have been better. If we got Patriots, Saints, Breeze and Brady in the Super Bowl, or we got Mahomes against the Rams, because that year they had that unbelievable game in the regular season. What was it, 54-51 the final score was. We could have had that. We could have had, Chiefs, Saints. Those three combinations were better. But we got the worst one, and we ended up getting the worst Super Bowl out of it. Let's look at the stats, though, for the game. Yeah, so Edelman had 10 receptions for 141 yards. That's a great performance. Tom Brady, he threw a pick, had no touchdowns. He had 262 yards passing. His QBR was a 24.4. Wow. You could have even gave it to Sony Michel, 18 carries for 94 yards and a touchdown. He had the only touchdown in the Super Bowl, so you could have gave it to him. But yeah, he was. I believe he was Julian Edelman was the last non-quarterback to win the award in the Super Bowl. Because I think, because then you had Von Miller. You had Malcolm Smith, who won it for the Seahawks, even though you probably could have gave it to the entire Seahawks defense. And you probably could have gave it to maybe the Von Miller strip sack of Cam Newton, that was for the touchdown. That was a huge play in the game. Malcolm Smith had the pick six, and that was against the Broncos. But yeah, it's usually going to be a quarterback award. So now that doesn't mean that a non-quarterback doesn't have any chance, because then you look at some of the other players that'll be playing in this game as well. You got Christian McCaffrey, who's a plus 475 on DraftKings, plus 450 on FanDuel and BetMGM, and then plus 475 on Caesars Sportsbook. Now, I think Christian McCaffrey, the 49ers are going to have to use him a lot in this game. Now, again, you go back to last year when they played against the Chiefs. He really wasn't a factor because, like I've been saying, they were trying to ease him in. They literally just acquired him from Carolina. So they weren't going to give him a full workload. But now the Chiefs are going to get they're going to get the full dose of Christian McCaffrey in this game. And he's going to be a big part of their game plan. He should be. I mean, you got 2 weeks for it. And, the Chiefs, their defense has been solid all year. But one thing that's kind of been a problem for them is stopping the run. And we did see that a little bit in the Bills game. The Ravens, we really didn't see that. They did away with the run and they were just throwing it constantly. But with the 49ers, they're going to have to run the football in this game. They're going to have to do their best to keep Mahomes off the field. And they got Christian McCaffrey, the best running back in the game. So, and I know when people are criticizing Purdy, they're like, oh, well, yeah, he just checks it down to McCaffrey. I mean, listen, it's Christian McCaffrey. He can make a lot of things happen when you check it down to him. So he's going to be a big part of the game plan. Now, the Chiefs can always, combat that and, take him out of the game somehow. But I don't know. It's going to be hard to contain Christian McCaffrey. I mean, the guy scores a touchdown every single week. So I could definitely see Christian McCaffrey having some. Well, first of all, the 49ers have to win. But if they win and Christian McCaffrey has a big game, maybe it's him. Then you also got, but then it gets tougher because then you look at, Travis Kelce, Deebo Samuel, Isaiah Pacheco, Rashee Rice, George Kittle, Ayuk. I mean, it would take a lot. Deebo Samuel plus 2,000 on both DraftKings and FanDuel, plus 3,500 on BetMGM, plus 2,500 on Caesars Sportsbook. Kelsey's a plus 1,200, plus 1,700, plus 1,400, plus 1,200 on the four major sports books. Isaiah Pacheco's plus 2,800. I'm just going to go across the board because, it goes, so on here, on covers.com, it goes DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM, and Caesars Sportsbook. Pacheco's plus 2,800, plus 3,500, plus 3,500, plus 3,000. Then Rashee Rice is plus 5,000, plus 7,000, plus 6,000, plus 6,000. Kittle is plus 6,000, plus 7,000, plus 8,000, plus 6,000. Ayuk is plus 6,000, plus 4,500, plus 5,000, plus 5,000. And then they also have Nick Bosa, who's a plus 7,500 on DraftKings and on Caesars, and then he's a plus 10,000 on BetMGM, and also a plus 10,000 on FanDuel. So, but yeah, that's the Super Bowl odds, Super Bowl MVP odds. I mean, I think but it's crazy how, after the quarterbacks, you got McCaffrey, and I went over his numbers, and then there's just a huge drop off after that. Kelce has the next best odds. You go from plus 475 on DraftKings to plus 1,200 on DraftKings, comparing Kelce and McCaffrey. But again, Christian McCaffrey is going to be heavily involved in this game. Deebo Samuel could also carry the ball as well, because, they've been using him as a gadget player, him taking carries out of the backfield. But, ultimately, if the Chiefs win the game, it's most likely going to be because of Mahomes. So he's going to get the MVP. With the 49ers, it might be a little bit different. Again, you usually give it to the quarterback, but again, I could see if McCaffrey has a big game and the 49ers win, I don't know. It depends on what Purdy's stats are, but yeah, I could see maybe McCaffrey getting it possibly. Maybe he has maybe he breaks a big run in this game for a touchdown. It's definitely possible. I think McCaffrey is a lock to score a touchdown. He's scored in every playoff game so far. Even though there's only been two, but still, he's and pretty much scored in every game this season. I mean, he's going to score in the Super Bowl. You would think, but of course, when I say that, it's going to end up not happening. No, I think he will. He is a lock to definitely score a touchdown in the Super Bowl. But we'll see. I mean, it's kind of tough for like Kelce to maybe win it, just because like if Kelce has 3 touchdowns, well, they're going to credit Mahomes for that, so they're going to give it to Mahomes. But I don't know. I mean, like, unless like, again, you have like a game like Edelman where a big chunk of like the quarterback's yardage is from you. Like if Kelce goes for like 200 yards in this game, or something, like maybe you give it to him. I don't know. I mean, I feel like with the Chiefs, it's going to be Mahomes, like, regardless. Unless, like, it's like a low-scoring game somehow, and, like, Chris Jones has, like, 6 sacks or something. I don't know. I'm just throwing, like, a random hypothetical out there. But, yeah, I mean, it's most likely going to be a quarterback that wins it. But, again, I'd like to see, McCaffrey win it if the 49ers do win the Super Bowl. Because, again, like, I want the 49ers to win the Super Bowl. I do. But I can't say that they're going to. But again, you go back and look at a lot of the picks that I made this year. I mean, again, most of them, but they pretty much all had to do with the spreads. I was pretty average, getting my 7-8 each week. I will say though, obviously the bracket kind of fell apart, but doing just like the spread picks, after Super Wildcard Weekend, I've only lost 1 game. I won 3 out of the 4 last week, and I won both championship games because I just said I'm out of it. I'm not, I'm just picking, not caring, and it's worked. The only game I've lost between the divisional round and championship Sunday is the Texans-Ravens game, and that game was close at one point, and then the Ravens pulled away. Other than that, I've won the 3 remaining games that weekend, and I won the 2 games last week, taking both underdogs. And the Lions, I mean, I thought that was going to be a lock when they were up 24-7. Then I had to sweat it. Well, I didn't really have to sweat it because it wasn't for anything. But then they covered with the Jameson Williams touchdown. So, but you know what? The picks for the playoffs haven't been bad, and I kind of have my pick already. Again, I said when I made the bracket that I was picking with my head. I mean, with my heart, as opposed to my head. It's going to be the same thing. This week. Well, next week. Because I want the 49ers to win, but, my head is telling me otherwise. So, but again, we got all next week to talk about this game. And I'm looking forward to it, even though a lot of people are complaining about it. But, I mean, I think it should be a good game, right? Hopefully. I'm a little worried, though, because the 49ers they've been starting so slow lately, and they're not going to be able to do that against the Chiefs. They're not going to get away with it. You got away with it with the Packers, you got away with it with the Lions, but now you got to deal with a team that's been there so many times before this. You fall behind, it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem. I hope it's not. I hope this game is bad. I hope this game is a shootout like last year's Super Bowl. Last year's Super Bowl was great. You had the Chiefs were down, then they came back. That was an exciting Super Bowl. I hope we get that here. We got a lot of stars in this Super Bowl. So I'm looking forward to it. I think I hope it's a good game. I hope it's a good game. So I'm just nervous because of how the 49ers have gotten off to a slow start, and Purdy's kind of been a little off. So hopefully, that's not the case here, and we just get a good game from the start. But so yeah, that's pretty much it when talking about this. But before I go into break, I just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So, when we come back from our second break of the show, we will then talk about some of the latest coaching changes. So we'll talk about the Seahawks hiring Mike Macdonald, what that means, and we'll also talk about some other coordinator changes as well. That is what we'll do when we come back from our second break of the show. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to talk about the latest coaching changes. So there's been a couple. Sorry, I can't talk for some reason right now. So we have a head coaching spot that's been filled. Also, a couple of coordinator things that I wanted to touch upon as well. Actually, there's one. I don't think I mentioned this on yesterday's show or the previous show, but the Steelers hiring Arthur Smith as their offensive coordinator. I know my friend who's a Steelers fan is upset about it. I know a Steelers YouTuber that I watch, he was upset about it. But yeah, so so obviously he was the Falcons head coach for the last 3 seasons. Went 7-10 this year. But the main thing is, it's just like the people were just questioning why he was, the whole Bijan Robinson thing at times during the year where he really wasn't using him. I mean, then you had that weird situation where, against the Bucs, where I guess he was sick and he was playing, then he wasn't playing, and then he came back. I don't know. I forget what happened there, but it just was weird how his usage for Bijan Robinson. But I mean, as a coordinator, with the Titans, you go back, when he was with the Titans, kind of revitalized Ryan Tannehill's career, So, I mean, we'll see what he's like as a offensive coordinator now with the Steelers. But I know people are just talking about, well, now he's not going to use Freiermuth, he's not going to use George Pickens. Yeah, we'll see. But I know people are complaining about it. So, but that's what the Steelers decided to do. So I know I didn't bring that up during the show, but I just wanted to. I know I did a short on it, but I didn't talk about it on the show here. But the main thing is that I wanted to get into is the Seahawks hiring Mike Macdonald. So spent the previous couple seasons with the Ravens as their defensive coordinator. He's now going to become the youngest head coach in the NFL. So you go from Pete Carroll, who was one of the oldest, or I think was the oldest head coach in the NFL, to now the youngest head coach in the NFL. But yeah, I mean, listen, he coached up a top defense in the NFL this season with the Ravens. He actually was with Jim Harbaugh at Michigan for a season. He was the defensive coordinator for Michigan. So he's an understudy, having spent 7 more seasons on the Ravens defensive staff from 2014 to 2020. Yeah, so the Seahawks go from the NFL's oldest head coach in the oldest head coach to the current youngest coach. Yeah, and listen, and a lot of people just talking him up, saying this is going to be a top coaching candidate, and now he lands in Seattle. And we'll see what happens there. Now, for me, again, I kind of am on that side of you need more of an offensive guy, but then again, you go and you look at what the Texans have done, like I said, with DeMeco Ryans. It's not to say that defensive guys can't be head coaches, but the way the game is now, you kind of want to bring in someone that maybe has, more of an offensive background. But listen, the Texans, they did a great job. They drafted C.J. Stroud. They have a good offensive coordinator in Slowick, and with DeMeco Ryans as the head coach, being more of a defensive guy, it worked out for them. And in Seattle, their issue is they need to find a quarterback, because it's not, unfortunately for Geno Smith, it was a nice story, but he's not the long-term answer there. He's not. The Seahawks need to, hey, maybe they bring back Russ. No, they need to address the quarterback position. Because you look at their offensive side of the ball, with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett and Jackson Smith and Jigba, Kenneth Walker, they have some nice pieces on the offensive side of the ball. They just need the quarterback, and if they can get the quarterback right, well, then you bring in, great people to help run the offense, and because I think Macdonald's still got to put together a staff, I believe. He could focus on the defense. Well, obviously being the head coach, but defense is his strong suit. You help out the defense because the Seahawks have defensive talent as well. Witherspoon, their rookie corner. The Seahawks are not, this team that just is far away from being, a contender, at least to make the playoffs. They just need a quarterback, which, again, for some organizations, they've been looking for quarterbacks for years. The Seahawks, they have a good roster. They just need that quarterback. So they're not far away from being a contender. And listen, they made the playoffs last year. It's not like they, and a lot of people didn't expect them to make the playoffs, but they did. So, yeah, like I said, I'm kind of like on the side of, I think you should bring in an offensive guy, but you know what? We'll see what he does. And again, you see what the Texans have been able to do. So, again, we'll see how it goes. But, it's a good hire. I don't think there's really been anything negative towards this hire. So, again, we'll see how it goes. But the other thing, other coordinator stuff, the Titans, they hired a Denard Wilson as their defensive coordinator. So he spent the past season as the Ravens DB's coach under Mike Macdonald. So you would think coming from that staff that that's a good hire. Wilson was on Nick Sirianni's staff from 2021 to 2022 and spent time as the DB's coach with the Rams and Jets earlier in his career. He was a candidate for the Titans and Giants DC jobs, and he now gets a chance to be on Tennessee's defensive play call with Brian Callahan as the head coach. So we'll see how that goes for the Titans. The other thing I wanted to talk about is Boston College's head coach leaving, Jeff Heffley. Is that how you pronounce it? Hafley? I hope that's how you pronounce it. I said Heffley, like Greg Heffley from the Diary of a Wimpy Kid books. I apologize for the mispronunciation if I'm not. Hafley leaves Boston College to be the Packers defensive coordinator. Now, he runs a different kind of defense than Joe Barry, because I did see that a lot of people like the hire. I think one of the things I saw is that he runs more, press coverage, and because the Packers just would be playing like zone, I guess, with Barry. So I know Packers fans really liked that. Listen, I guess he jumped on the opportunity. He's like, I can get a coaching job in the NFL. I'm going to take that right away. And I just saw on the comment on the post I was looking at, they're like, I guess he's abandoning us. The Packers, and that's something big, because the Packers, was kind of the weakness of the team. The offense was up and down all year. The defense, but the offense eventually found its groove at the end of the season to get to the playoffs. The defense, he gave up 30 points to the Panthers, and then they didn't score a point the last 2 weeks of the season. They needed to change something there. Now, me personally, I actually thought Joe Barry did enough to keep his job. I honestly didn't think Matt LaFleur was going to fire him or get rid of him. And they did. They let him go. And, now they bring in the head coach from Boston College, Hafley, and or Hafley, or however you pronounce it. Again, apologize for the mispronunciation if I'm not saying it right. If he comes in and he does his job, the Packers, they're going to be a good team next year. They should. The offense, Jordan Love again now, year 2 being the starter, another year with the young receivers, and the Packers have talent on defense. They do. It's just they need the right person to, get them on the right track. And, we'll see if that can happen here. But from what I saw, it seems like, at least on social media, people like the hire. So, but now we look at the landscape here, and there's only one coaching job left, and that is the Washington Commanders. Now, again, I heard, other people probably heard this too, when Kevin Burkhardt said that Ben Johnson was the favorite to get the Commanders job. He's no longer available. He's staying with the Lions. What are the Commanders going to do? Because you still got Belichick out there, and it doesn't seem like anything's happening there. You still got Vrabel out there. What are they gonna do? I don't know. I don't know. It's just gonna be odd that Belichick and Vrabel might not have jobs. And I understand with some people with Vrabel saying, well, he's only won, 2 playoff games. It's not like he had great success in the playoffs. I mean, the Titans make the playoffs, but the last couple of years not so much. But it's not like they really have that much success once they get there. But I don't know. I mean, I still think he's a good coach. Titans were the 1 seed a couple of years ago, even though I think they were kind of a little bit of a fraudulent 1 seed. But still, like, they were the 1 seed. Again, like, they made it all the way to the AFC Championship game the first year that Mahomes won the Super Bowl. He's had success. It's just he hasn't been able to get them to the Super Bowl. And recently, again, the playoff success, he has had success, but, like, the recent success, not so much. But I don't know. I still think he should, get a job. I mean, what? That's it? I don't know. But we'll see. I mean, there's 1 spot remaining. And I don't know. We might see Vrabel and Belichick, not coaching next year, which is going to be strange. More so for Belichick, because you thought like a team would just, immediately snatch him up. But I guess not. I guess, like, with I guess with him wanting control still, I guess maybe that might have scared some teams off, scared the Falcons off, I guess, because they went in and they hired Raheem Morris. So it's odd, but yeah, I mean that's kind of where we're at right now. Belichick and Vrabel, we might not be seeing them on the sidelines next year. So, but there's 1 spot remaining. So, but again, like, something could come out and a head coach loses their job out of nowhere, and then that opens the door for him. But I don't know if that's going to happen. So I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. But it's definitely an interesting time, especially now if they end up not getting anything. So that's pretty much it. Let me know what you guys think about the recent hires. The Packers, getting a new DC, Seahawks new head coach, the Titans their new DC. Let me know if you have any comments on that. So when we come back from our final break of the show, we'll talk about a team that maybe should have changed head coaches, but they can't for reasons. We're going to talk about the Jets behind the scenes because there was some stuff that's come out from The Athletic on what went on throughout the season, stuff involving Robert Saleh. We'll get into all that when we come back from our final break of the show. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we are now going to talk about the Jets behind the scenes. Now, actually, before I do that, I happened to check my group chat, and there is no more spots remaining. The Commanders have hired Dan Quinn, the defensive coordinator from the Cowboys, to be their next head coach. Now, listen, yeah, it's. He's returning to be a head coach after some time. He obviously the last time he was a head coach was with the Falcons. I'm not really a big fan of this hire, especially with how the Cowboys' defense performed in the playoff game against the Packers. Now you're bringing in Dan Quinn, and he was also part of the meltdown in the Super Bowl. Yeah, not really a fan of this hire. I will say it's good for the Cowboys because, the way the defense played in the wild card game, that kind of falls at his feet, so I don't know. I mean, the Commanders, they decided that was the right thing to do, but yeah, not really a fan of the hire. So he went 43-42 with the Falcons. Obviously, again, was a part of that, the collapse in the Super Bowl, 28-3 to the Patriots. They ended up losing that game. So he went 14-23 from 2018 to 2020 as the head coach of the Falcons. I don't know. It's I don't really agree with it. I mean, also here, Dallas was a top 8 in points allowed in each of Quinn's 3 seasons and finished 5th in yards. So, I mean, listen, he did improve the defense for the Cowboys, but again, I don't know what happened in the game against the Packers. But we're getting off topic here. Let's talk about what this segment is about. This is about the Jets behind the scenes. So the Athletic came out with something that basically kind of was talking about Robert Saleh. It was just the drama that went on behind the scenes. And my friend's asking me, because I said I'm going to talk about the Jets in the last segment here. He's asking what I'm going to talk about. Well, I'm going to talk about the Athletic article. And, it's there's some things in it that are interesting. So, per the Athletics, Zach Rosenblatt and Diana Rossini, which I think she was somebody that Aaron Rodgers called out, if I'm not mistaken. So basically, one Jets coach described the situation as such a you-know-what mess behind the scenes and said something has to change. There's also a lot of things, about Nathaniel Hackett and how the offense really just they didn't really prepare for the games. I'm trying to see where that was said because I'm looking at Bleacher Report right now. They noted that Hackett was Rodgers' handpicked offensive coordinator. The dynamic between the two is described as more frat boys than player coach, but Hackett's attention to detail on the field was lacking. Here it is. So for most of the season, Hackett would meet with offensive line coach, running game coordinator Keith Carter, and passing game coordinator Todd Downing during the week, but wouldn't get together with the rest of the offensive staff until the last minute of game prep. This is what Rosenblatt and Rossini wrote. This is the other thing, too. Robert Saleh was said to be unhappy that the New York Giants don't get as much negative coverage as the Jets, calling it unfair. I mean, come on. Really? It's just... Here's the thing. What do you expect? Now, here's the thing. Actually, I don't know what I was going to say. But, again, what do you expect? The Giants, well, I guess that's what I was going to say. The Giants did get off to a rough start. But the Giants kind of, towards the end of the season, they started playing more competitive football. Well, and again, the Jets, they did beat the Patriots the final week of the regular season. But still, I mean, the Giants did win a playoff game last year. The Giants have had recent success, more recently than the Jets have. The Jets have kind of been in this, they've been going in circles for years now. there's been times where you're like, oh, maybe this could be a year they make the playoffs, like the Ryan Fitzpatrick season. But other than that, it's just been, they going through quarterbacks, coaches, GMs, they just can't get it right. And you got Robert Saleh, who I do like Saleh. I don't think he's a good coach, and a lot of other people as well don't think that. I know people that work in the sports industry in New York. You got them going as far as saying Robert Saleh is the worst coach in the NFL. But that's what you're worried about, the media coverage. Here's the thing. Maybe if you won football games, then you wouldn't have this problem. And here's the thing. This is another thing that my friends and I were discussing recently. So Aaron Rodgers comes to the Jets, right? He says, I want to be a New York Jet. Great, for Jet fans. Great for my friends. I would, happy for them. Me, I bought tickets for Jets Chiefs because I wanted to see him and Mahomes play each other finally. Of course, that ends up not happening. But, who does he recruit? So you bring in Nathaniel Hackett. Well, first of all, they got Nathaniel Hackett before they traded for Rodgers. Then they got Rodgers. So who does Rodgers recruit? So he goes and recruits Randall Cobb, Tim Boyle, Alan Lazard, and then they get Dalvin Cook. So I want to go back to 2020. Tom Brady leaves the Patriots. Now, not by trade, becomes a free agent, signs with the Buccaneers. And what does he do? He says, I want you to get me Gronk. So the Bucs get Gronk. I think the Patriots still had his rights. So they had to, but yeah, they got him because Gronk was retired, but then they got him. Then he's like, I want Antonio Brown. They get Antonio Brown. I want Leonard Fournette. They go out and get Leonard Fournette. And what happens? They win a Super Bowl. Now, they also, I think they signed Ryan Jensen. I don't think he was there already. They signed him to be their center. They drafted Tristan Wirfs. They already had this good defense. And what happens? The Bucs end up winning the Super Bowl. And then their second year, they probably could have won the Super Bowl again, but injuries and Antonio Brown went off the rails. It was starting to go that way, but then you had him, oddly enough, against the Jets, throwing his, everything into his gloves in the stands and whatnot, and his shirt into the stands, whatever. And that's the last time we saw him on a football field. But still, they got a Super Bowl out of it. The Jets, Rodgers, he brings in Randall Cobb. Listen, I love Randall Cobb, but Randall Cobb is not the same player that he was back in 2014. He's not. He's not an impact player. Then you're bringing in Alan Lazard. You're paying him all that money. He's not a number one wide receiver. I mean, I guess he was going to be the number two. Well, he was supposed to be the number two to Garrett Wilson because they had Garrett Wilson. They have Garrett Wilson. But, I mean, he was like a healthy scratch numerous times this year. Dalvin Cook, I mean, they brought him in because I guess he was going to be the insurance policy for Breece Hall. But Breece Hall was like, I'm healthy. We saw him week one. The first handoff, the highlight of Rodgers' Jets' career so far, other than him running out with the flag before the game, is handing it off to Breece Hall, and Breece Hall, taking off with it for, 20 yards, whatever it was. That was his highlight. So they were like, yeah, Breece Hall's fine. And then he had another big run in the game. It's just, that's who Rodgers brought in. And what ends up happening? He gets hurt. Zach Wilson has to step in, and it just, again, another 7-10 season, and it just, it was a disaster. Now, what does it say about Woody Johnson? I didn't see this. Woody Johnson has a reputation within the building of consuming criticism from fans and media alike on social media and would often share those opinions with Saleh in conversations about what wasn't working on the offense. Okay. Yeah, it just... yeah, I mean, you had Rodgers wanting to return this season. Obviously, when they were out of it, he said he wasn't going to come back, which I thought was the right decision. But it just was a lot. And I think, I also saw, I think Saleh, publicly, he wouldn't, he wouldn't talk negative about Zach Wilson. But, because my friend sent a bunch of screenshots of the actual Athletic article. Like, he wouldn't take, like, public shots at Zach Wilson, but, like, behind closed doors, like, it just wasn't, it was different. But, I mean, this was a disaster for the Jets, And listen, if you got a chance to get Aaron Rodgers, you do it. But, I mean, it's just, everything went wrong. And the guys that they recruited, I mean, they're not going to have an impact. They haven't had an impact on this team. None of them. I mean, Tim Boyle, that's who you bring in? You bring in Nathaniel Hackett. That was a Rodgers thing. It just hasn't worked out. It was like the complete opposite in Tampa. Because Tampa, you're coming into, you got a good defense. You got Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, an offensive line that, you added a couple pieces to. Like I said, you through the draft, through free agency, then you add to it Antonio Brown, who was on his way to being a Hall of Famer. I don't know. I mean, I guess he's still a Hall of Famer, but I don't know the way he's been acting, ever after football. I don't know. I mean, imagine Antonio Brown now giving a Hall of Fame speech. You might want to cover your ears. But you bring him in, you bring Gronk in, you bring in Fournette. I mean, these guys had impact. These guys, all three of those guys scored touchdowns in the Super Bowl that the Bucs won. The Jets, I mean, Rodgers has them bring in Randall Cobb and Alan Lazard. And now listen, I thought Lazard was a good player, but I mean, you compare that to what Brady brought in. I mean, you can't compare it. So, yeah, and it's just, you didn't bring in an insurance policy in case Rodgers got hurt. You bring in Tim Boyle, who, you look at his college record, it's horrible. And, when he played, it was terrible. It was. Zach Wilson just was not prepared for this. Again, I mean, you go back to the Texans game, I mean, that was his best game as a pro. But outside of that, it just was, you wanted to just, like, you couldn't even look at the screen with how the Jets' offense was. It was just horrible to watch. And, they don't have a good offensive line. Guys got hurt. Vera Tucker again got hurt. And it led to another 7-10 season. And you got this great defense that you're wasting. So, yeah, it's just, but Robert Saleh is not, like once Rodgers leaves, like if this year turns out to be next year, 2024 turns out to be a disaster, this is done. You gotta blow it up. You gotta get rid, like, I understand, like, Rodgers gets hurt, and I mean, I guess I'll give him a pass. But even if Rodgers didn't get hurt, like, was he, he probably would have got hurt anyways. Because that offensive line's not good. And the Bucs did a great job surrounding Brady with a stone wall, with the weapons, and he was able to be successful in Tampa. This right here, what the Jets have currently, this is not going to work. It's not going to work. I don't know. Listen, I don't know what they're going to do. They could trade for Devontae Adams, that would actually help them. Not bringing in Randall Cobb. No offense to Randall Cobb. I don't want to bash him, but it's just not. It right now. It's just not going to work, and I don't know. I hope it does. I hope Rodgers comes out next year and he just proves the doubters wrong. Because listen, he's a guy that I've loved watching growing up, but it just. Ignoring the off the field stuff and whenever he goes on the McAfee show, that's a different topic. But when I watch this guy play football, I've enjoyed it, and I hope he comes out and he plays well next year. But it's going to be hard. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it for the show for today. I thank you guys for watching. We'll be back again tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And until then, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Take care.